Hello, and welcome to the Grow Podcast, sponsored by the Grow Solutions Center. I'm so glad that you are here with us today. Today, we're going to dive into two different topics wrapped all into one. So we're going to talk about grain origination and the emphasis that we are really putting on grain origination, obviously always as an elevator and as a co-op, but certainly it's a new piece. And John Setterdahl is going to be here today to talk to us more about just the new strength and some new ideas that we're rolling with in grain origination. And Savannah Carroll is also going to talk to us today when it comes to talking about off-the-farm pickups and what we need to be thinking about here going into fall, even though, we just wrapped up planting season or are wrapping up planting season. So stick around and follow us through it all. All right. So first, starting off, like I said, with John Setterdahl. We have John on the podcast today to, as I mentioned, just kind of talk about origination more and some things that are maybe going on in the marketplace. And so, John, go ahead, tell us about yourself and what your current role is here at Landus.
Yeah, thanks, Ashley. My name is John Setterdahl. I've been with Landus since the spring of 2020, but I've actually been in the state of Iowa for much longer than that. Came here in the mid-90s. I worked for FC for 19 years. I did leave before the merger and went to work for an ethanol company as managing crush margins. So that was interesting for a while. But for the most part, my career has been entirely on in grain, risk management, transportation. Before coming to Iowa, I worked in the commercial side of the business for Pillsbury and then ConAgra for about 9 years. Moved around a lot along the river system, everywhere from Grand Forks, North Dakota to Madisonville, Kentucky, and about 10 places in between. But originally from Illinois, Geneseo, and married with 3 grown kids and 5 grandchildren now.
Ooh, that's fun.
From 10 to 6 months,
Oh.
all in Iowa. So
Lucky.
all good. Yeah.
Okay. And tell us a little bit about what you're currently doing here.
So my roles here over the years have been different. They've all been grain related. Most of my time has been on risk management and merchandising. And most recently, I'm moving over to lead the origination efforts for the company. The reason for that was really twofold. One of the most important one is that's critical to our success going forward. We do want to grow this grain business, both organically in the state of Iowa and also other surrounding states. The other reason is to let some others step forward in risk management roles that I was at before. So, looking forward to the challenge and the opportunity.
Yeah. Well, I know I was excited to have you back in the origination space, right? I think it's always really fun as a originator that's been here for a little while, but certainly don't have the tenure that you do, to just hear the different times that you've seen the grain industry walk through. And, I'm sure that there's some patterns and some, similarities. So it's always interesting, I think, to hear your perspective.
Yeah, it's a unique path because I would say the normal progression would be in grain that most people start in origination because you've kind of got to be able to do that and understand it to do other things. And then generally you would go from there into, transportation or logistics, risk management, merchandising, trading, location management, things like that. It's not very often you get the chance to go back where you started into origination.
Yeah.
But again, it speaks to how important it is to Landus and our vision going forward, that I'm back there. Janet Smith, who most folks out there would know that name, she works for me along with a few others, and she leads the Grow Grain team, of which you were part of, Ashley. So that's a group of about 12 individuals that are more or less our go-to grain experts in the field for growers to interact with and get marketing assistance.
Yeah. Well, I think any day you get to work with a farmer on origination is a good one.
Yeah, and again, I've kind of been and seen a lot of things, lived it a long time, kind of behind that curtain of the merchandising world, and to be able to share some of those things now and help our origination team be better and understand maybe a bit more about some of the bigger picture things and Grain cycles that can come and go. I've seen a lot of them in my 37-year career, and I'm certainly not done seeing them the way it looks like here in the future.
Yeah. Okay, so just kind of diving in, right? We're going to keep this pretty, I think, casual and just really dive into a crazy and simple question. Why is origination important, right? Which is kind of laughable for you and I, but let's talk through it and why the refocus or, bigger focus here, I think, moving forward.
Well, the scope of that has changed a lot over the years. And, particularly in the environment we're in now where, growers are getting bigger. That'll probably continue to happen. Their risk management, their guidance for how they market grain, those needs are different than they were in the past. You combine that with the fact that out in the country, in terms of delivery locations, they're probably going to be fewer instead of more going forward. So there's an interesting intersection there of different need combined with different capacities for the market to deliver. And I haven't even talked about, what trend line yields, might be in the future. So it's really important for us. And, again, we want to do what's best for the grower. The team that you're on, Ashley, along with our relationship specialists, which are basically our counter folks out at the facilities, that we're also going to empower and equip better to have more in-depth grain conversation with customers. The intent of all that is to help the grower make better decisions.
Yeah.
And, we're probably going to, right now we're in a transition year. I was looking on the calendar here earlier today, and it's hard to believe that 4 years ago today, cash corn was upper $2s to low $3.
Yep.
And it feels like we've been in this $6 to $7 corn world for a decade, and the reality is it's only been 3.5 years.
Yeah.
And there were reasons for that, most of which were, various supply shortage issues throughout the world that kind of kept piling up on top of each other. But we're in transition year now, and the market's talking more about where's the demand going to be right now instead of do we have enough supply, and that's a completely different set of fundamentals for the market, and then also I think for the grower is going to present, a need for better planning, and better trusted advice on marketing, because frankly, the last 3 years, you probably could have gotten by pretty well without having a plan, because there weren't carries in the market, and flat cash prices were elevated all the time, so there frankly wasn't a whole lot. I mean, I don't want to diminish that, but
actually, I mean, I think, a lot of my customers that were really good planners actually probably got hurt a little bit by being a good planner a lot of times, right?
That 1 year where it goes up,
yes,
your planning ahead would have hurt you, right? But, I've been doing this for a while. The long-term odds are nearly 80% of the time that you forward market. And I'm talking we're in late April filming this today, but in that January to June timeframe of selling new crop that year, or even getting out ahead a little bit to the following crop year, generally it works. 8 out of 10 times. The 1 year or 2 years it doesn't.
Yeah,
those do sting.
Yes,
but there's also, I think, a lot of growers getting stung right now by having grain at home in the bin that's not sold.
Yeah.
The last stocks report verified just in the state of Iowa, there's 100 million more bushels of corn on farm than there were this time a year ago.
Yeah.
Most of that's unsold. So, I mean, there's, the planning concept, can be, it's not going to work 100% of the time, but those transition years can be equally as painful, whether you have a plan or if you don't. And it looks right now like we're going to be entering a cycle here. Again, I'm assuming weather's going to be normal, but you hear what's happening in the world. For example, China approving more GMO seed usage within the country. Combine that with what the population trends are in China. I mean, I just mentioned that because they've been such an an important
Mhm.
demand leader over the past, couple of decades, along with biofuels.
Yeah.
That's I mean, they've driven demand. And if that starts to slow down, and again, it appears I'm just matching the rhetoric versus
Yeah. Yeah.
what the market is talking about. It appears that might be the case going forward. I mean, there might be a situation where, when they're going to import grain, they might be able to fulfill all those needs from South America. And so what does the U.S. look like for export, partners,
Yeah.
demand if China's off the grid?
Mhm.
I think that's something that, again, I've kind of, seen them ramp up in my career. And now if that's starting to cycle the other way, I think that's something we can, talk to growers about and help prepare for. And the biggest thing is just to, I think, have trusted partners that you have relationships with that you can go to for advice that are truly going to be looking out in your best interest, what's best for you and your marketing plan.
Well, and I think like going further into that, right? The last probably 2-3 years, maybe a trusted partner hasn't mattered as much, to be honest, when it comes to where to deliver your grain in the farmer's perspective, because it was all about trying to get what felt like the best bid. But I really, truly do believe, going back when I first started those, sub $3 corn, those were the times that having somebody who had your best interest was most important. And so we are, headed back into those days. And so, I would just call out, like, if there are farmers listening, you've never worked with any of our origination team, find, someone on the grow team, even if you, go into your location, figure out who your grow person would be, start working with them and figuring out, how to build a relationship because it is important, and I always tell my customers, like, I hope when I call, it's not just to chat with you, right? Like, I certainly always have something that I want to bring to you, especially when we were just talking before the podcast started, the dynamic and the attitude in the country right now is changing. I think it's becoming more stressful. The operating notes interest is getting higher, right? The banks are calling is what I said when I first started. And so I think, as we approach kind of maybe doomier times, how do you have somebody here at Landus that can help you really facilitate, can we direct ship your grain if the price at us isn't right, or just making sure that you have someone that really has your back?
Yeah, I think gone are the days when, when folks are going to try and, steer your grain to have to go through an elevator.
Yeah,
Yeah. There's times when that's necessary and that's the best option at the time for what you have. But you're hitting on something very important, Ashley, and that is that, you and the rest of the grow team, are going to be trusted advisors for growers and, for all their grain needs.
Mm-hmm.
And, so that can involve a Landus asset or not. It can be going to a direct ship market. That's the best time and value for the grower. I was talking with a couple growers here a couple weeks ago, and, a comment that I heard was in terms of this more open and transparent relationship that we're seeking, is that they were maybe fearful of if they told us, too much about their operation, that they might feel like they're losing leverage.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I understand that completely. And I thought about that for a moment, and then, my response was, you're losing leverage by what's happening to the market around you, with consolidations, ethanol plants buying others. I mean,
just less
leverage
choices.
is disappearing whether you're actively thinking you're part of it or not.
Yeah.
And again, back to this next cycle that we're going to be going into, it looks right now that, there's going to be some challenges to it. And, finding those windows of profitability they're going to take some work.
Yeah.
And my ultimate response was, I think that, the cycle we're going into, what you might need more is a trusted partner that's going to truly be looking out in your interest and your benefit to market grain, in lieu of instead of worrying about losing a little bit of leverage by, revealing too much.
Yeah.
And, I understand that there's there's third-party options that are out there for various things, right? Whether it's market advice or brokerage or planning, things of that nature. But what I do want to also let the audience know is that we're working on a new offering here at Landus that it's going to be called AcreDirect Grain Solutions, and it's going to be all about the things I just spoke to, where frankly, we can do, if a grower wanted to have options and futures positions in a brokerage account, we have that here.
Yeah.
It speaks to you and the rest of the grow team in terms of your ability to help them with a marketing plan and overall risk management. I think we can do some more things with information sharing. And by that, I mean, you can go on the web, various sources, and read probably more than you want to every day about the grain markets.
Yes.
And, how do you sort through all that? Because it can be noisy, and some of it has an agenda to it. At the end of the day, who's got time?
Yeah.
So we have access to a lot of that. And like one thing I said earlier, I think our ability to, the markets that we see to let growers, kind of behind the merchandising curtain, to benefit decision-making, is going to be a good thing for them. So we're really looking forward to crafting that offering and getting it out soon.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about specifically, something we talk about on the grow team is this year in general. So interesting year as far as it feels like we had a pretty large harvest in general across the state of Iowa, but the farmer has truly really held on to that grain. And so we've seen some, off-farm movement of corn and soybeans, but sure feels like there's still a lot of corn, kind of hanging around in the bins. And so talk to us a little bit about, what that means, especially as we're going to talk to Savannah a little bit later about harvest logistics. Fall is a few months away yet, but it feels like it's coming fast.
Yeah. So transition year, like I said earlier, right? So, if the numbers hold, we're going to be looking at a U.S. corn carryout of 2 billion, something around that this year. That's a number we haven't seen since, going back to, 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And then if you look at what happened in the couple of years before that, there was a 2 to 3 year cycle there where that's what corn carryouts were, between 2 and 2.2 billion. And that translated to cash grain average prices that were significantly lower than we are today. So you bring up a good point. The fact that there's so much grain on the farm that is unsold. The grower, tends to do what they should have done the year before. So, I think there's still some hope that we might have a rally this summer. Frankly, if we have one, it's going to have to be caused by weather. Overall demand just does not look like it's solid enough to, for that to carry the ball across the goal line for us. So there is a risk out there that there's a wave of grain that comes to market this summer that would be for the first time, frankly, in 3 years, that it's going to be more than the market wants.
Yeah.
We haven't had that feeling in quite some time. And, additionally, I want to point out that if you look at other states surrounding us besides the state of Iowa, you can see that some of the basis trends out there already reflect that there's a worry about excess supply because of the various end-user destinations in Iowa, and combined with the farmer who's not sold much. That's kind of kept this spot premium alive around here. But there's probably a day coming this summer when grain collectively feels like it wants to move, and basis numbers could be quite a bit weaker. And, if that is combined with a crop in the field that hopefully is growing and looking great, that could kind of give a depressing feel towards basis going into the fall.
Yeah.
We haven't had a situation, again, in 3 years where, the last 3 years it's been empty everything you have because the market needs everything.
Yeah. And just for perspective, right? Like when I started 5 years ago, harvest basis was 40 to 50 under at most locations for new crop corn. in the last 3 years, it's really been 2025. And so, I think farmers, I think, don't want to admit that we could see those numbers again. 20 cents right off the top is just because of the, influx of supply. As you think about, ethanol plants, feed mills, the end user only needs to grind so much corn, right? And they only want to buy so much corn to get them through until we have the next harvest.
Right. Agree. Yeah. I mean, that cyclical value or new crop values that we've had the last 3 years, it just feels like it's going to be different.
Yeah. I think the other thing that'll be interesting to see, you mentioned we're recording this at the end of April. I'm interested to see, like, the farmer gets out of the field. Does she feel like they need to go ahead and move some corn? It feels like, I'm a farm kid. I married a farmer, so I get to see some of this. It feels like at our house, bills are coming due. And so, moving corn obviously correlates with when cash flow is needed. And so I'm just really interested to see when the customer starts to really heavily move corn again, specifically corn. Well,
the market is shaped like it expects that to happen.
Yeah.
Because most markets are inverted.
Mm-hmm.
Basis is higher for April.
Yep.
Because frankly, it's some end users that don't have a lot of forward coverage. It's, what does it take to physically get you off the planter and think about delivering corn?
Mm-hmm.
And this is the time of year where you want to be planting corn if it's a nice day, right? So there's a reason for that market structure today, but what's the structure going forward in posted bids, nobody's very aggressive for the summer.
Yeah.
We're seeing rail markets the same way. So the market in general is expecting there to be a feel to the market like there's too much crop around. Now, the question is, when is that? Is it June 10th or is it July 25th or is it even later than that? But that's probably eventually coming. So, and that's why I would encourage, growers to, think about a marketing plan. If you haven't, been reluctant to, felt like you haven't needed one. Again, I can kind of get why he would be in that position the last couple of years. Market's going to be a lot different here these next couple of years, and it looks like, farmers going to get kind of tough again. Now, there will be windows of opportunity there for margin to be had.
Mm-hmm.
It looks like, once we get through spring here, from what I'm hearing, there'll be another potential downward price movement in inputs. So far, rent and land have been kind of sticky.
Yeah.
But, that might be the next thing that needs to show some signs of breaking.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's a few months down the road.
Okay. So I'm going to throw this at you. And so I didn't prep you for this, but we're approaching May, which May, is a big month as we talk about carbon intensity scores and different things with ethanol plants. And there's so many questions I think that the farmer has. Do you have any kind of guidance or, any comments that you would make, as the farmer is planting his or her crop, right? And he's getting, I think, kind of bombarded with some of these things coming in. What does the farmer need to know about this and how can we help them? If at all.
Yeah. Talk about a lot of noise.
Yeah, it's so much.
There's a lot out there in terms of, what is a CI score? It stands for carbon intensity. And, what's it going to be worth? How do I get one? There are different pathways to that.
Mm-hmm.
But what I would tell listeners is that I think Landus is on the forefront here because we have a pilot project this year going with Friona Industries based out of the Texas Panhandle to where if a grower signs up, we can get by field CI scores established. Some of that was a paid promotion.
Mm-hmm.
Those acres have been fulfilled, but we can go beyond that for. You won't be paid anything, but you could still for free.
Get your score. Yeah.
There are other firms out here that will offer to calculate your CI score on corn for you, but they might want to charge $5 to $7 an acre or something. But we've got the ability to do that. I would say that my guidance would be just to use this year to learn. There's nothing that's been monetized yet from an end user or through a fully rule established, determined government policy to say, here's what this is worth. But there's enough out there and enough work being done on this to where, it's going to be worth something to somebody. And, if you want to be a party to that, you don't wait too long before you learn. Talk to anybody on our Grow Solutions Center that could tell you more details about that. But, learn about your CI score and learn about what makes it a certain number. The average throughout the U.S. is around 29 to 30, for example. And again, not knowing fully what it's worth, but, somebody's going to figure this out. It's going to be, determined by government rules at the end of the day, which is a little bit scary, but, it is what it is. Yeah. And where Landus hopes to be eventually is to where we can be the one offering a kind of an a la carte plan on okay, here's some things you can do to lower your CI score. And it might be nitrogen stabilizers. It might be no tillage. It could involve cover crops. Yeah. And all those are going to have a certain valuation to them. And that valuation of CI reduction is worth this many cents a bushel on corn. Okay. It would be great to get to that level of clarity. And then the grower can decide, what he's willing to do and what he wants to do and what works for his operation.
Yeah, but you're exactly right. It's a lot of noise. I mean, I know we've received a couple letters at home too, and it's very vague whenever I feel like you hear about something right now. So I think that's good advice. Listen in, and if you have questions, feel free to call the Solution Center, and we can certainly help you as best as we can.
Yeah, and with this trial we're doing this year, we're going to learn a lot too. Yeah, just about how the process works. How to work with a third-party verifier of the score, because it can't be just us, making this stuff up, using the grower's information. There has to be a third-party verifier. So a lot of this is getting a lot of that groundwork put together. So, ideally a year from now, there's going to be hopefully a big offering, a lot of acres that are tied to a pretty good financial proposition to the grower, that we at least would have learned how to do this this year on a limited scale to where we're ready to roll next year with a big program. For sure. Okay. Well, just kind of thinking here, like I said, personally, I am just really excited for you to be back on the origination front. I've gotten to work with you a little bit, obviously, throughout my tenure here, but origination is fun, and so I'm really glad to have you back. And so to wrap this up before we kick off into Savannah's portion, anything you would add for the farmer who's, thinking about harvest, got his hopefully crop planted by this time, and just really thinking about the corn or soybeans left in the bin here? Yeah, I would just add, as we transition to Savannah's discussion, that the area she's involved with trucking, whether it's off the farm or out of the field, that's an area where we're running to the demand. Yeah. It's hard to find a spare truck and a spare driver. Yeah. For 1 or 2 months a year, but that's one of those pathways to growth that we think is of value to farmers, and we're kind of running towards the burning building a bit, because it's hard to find drivers for us too. But at least we have the size and scope to keep those facilities and drivers and trucks busy the rest of the year. Yeah. So that's an important part of our offering going forward as well. Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you for being here. I really enjoyed talking with you. Great. Thank you.
Okay. So next on the podcast, we have Savannah joining us. I will let her go ahead and introduce herself. So go ahead. Tell us about yourself and your role here.
Yeah. My name is Savannah Jenkins, and I've been here for, I'm going on 5 years. And I used to be a manager of fleet dispatch. And that recently changed last July to strategic dispatcher, with a heavy emphasis on picking up grain off the farm. So the last 9 months or so, I've been focusing on that. And really excited. Can't believe that planting's here and we're gearing up for fall already.
I know. It's always crazy, right? So, we're sitting here, this is releasing, in May, and hopefully by this point, most of the crop has been planted, and we're already talking about, and have been really talking about for a while now, harvest logistics. And it starts so early for us. Obviously fall is a really big time, not that spring isn't, but it's just, they're 2 huge seasons that we need to plan out.
Yeah. And it's kind of crazy. But it seems like things just get earlier and earlier. Yeah. And I'm going to feed into that this year. My deadline is going to be July 15th.
Oh gosh. So talk a little bit more. So when it comes to farmers and when it comes to, them that are listening to the podcast, we obviously have on-farm grain pickup. And so with that, we just have the service that I feel like is just it's just really great, right? No matter if you are a really large farmer and need some assistance, maybe you don't have enough truck capacity, maybe you're a smaller farmer and it doesn't make sense for you to own, a semi or two, we cater to all. So talk a little bit, you just threw that data at us. So what does that mean for the farmers? What do they need to be doing?
Yeah. So if you would like a truck for fall, it needs to be booked by July 15th. Now, I know that there's going to be things that come up, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to go to start your truck mid-August, do some maintenance on it. And oh no, there's some stuff that's not working. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to run this truck all fall. And if that's the case, reach out. So the process that we kind of go about it is you reach out to whoever buys your grain. And then they reach out to me and we make sure that we have enough trucks scheduled for you for fall. And it can be anything from planned and scheduled by July 15th, or it can be up to the day before if you're like, oh no, I need a truck tomorrow, my driver's sick, something like that. Now, I will say that if you want a guaranteed truck, it needs to be booked by July 15th. And like I said, you go through the person that originated your grain, and then they'll set it up with me and we'll make sure that we have a truck to fit all of your needs for fall. But then on the other side of that, like I said, if something comes up, obviously always feel free to reach out and we will do everything we can to make it work.
Yeah. And too, if you're sitting here thinking, well, nobody's even originated my grain yet. First, no worries. It's been a weird year, right? Going into, and John, we talked about this a little bit about how the season in this year, as far as grain origination has been. So if you're still sitting here thinking, well, I think I might need a truck, but they haven't purchased anything from me yet, that's okay. So just if you think that you might need a truck or would be interested, just reach out to the Grow Grain team. That number is in the link here in the show notes. And so definitely reach out to them. Or if you're like, well, I just, I don't know who should buy my grain, start there. Go ahead and call the Grow line and somebody would be happy to help you, just walk you through what kind of programs we have. So Savannah, dive into a little bit, last fall was truly your first fall in this role. I'm a little biased here saying that I'm so glad that you took that role. It took so much pressure off of, me as an originator to try to figure out where trucks were. And it took me completely out of the logistics scenario and logistics conversation, right? So talk to us a little bit about how does it work? A farmer says, yes, I want trucks. He agrees to the rate. Talk to us a little bit about the logistics, I guess, quote unquote, of how that would work day to day.
Yeah. So what's special about my role is I'm not only working with the person who bought the grain, working with the farmer on where we're picking it up at, which field, but then also I'm working with the marketing team as well on where we should take it.
Yeah.
And that's what's special about my role is we're not just taking it to the nearest elevator or to an elevator that we're tight on space at. So we get to take it where we think it's best.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's special that I work with so many different people while still providing the best service to the farmer at the same time. Yeah.
So then when it comes to this coming fall, are there any changes, that if a customer had trucks before, are there any changes kind of being implemented? I know you and I talked a little bit about timing. So tell us more about that and what they can expect going forward into this year.
Yeah, traditionally, and this is not our first year with doing grain off the farm, but traditionally you're in an area, you're hiring the trucks that you need for that area, and then you're going about your business and making it work each fall. And I would say with me taking this position last July, we kind of made that work. But this year, we're going to dive deeper into what do we have for bushels? What do we actually need for trucks? Because sometimes we need trucks for a week and sometimes we don't need them for 3 weeks, and what is that sweet spot for a start date and things like that. So, yeah, we're going to hire for what we need, obviously, but then also we're pushing back a little bit on what do you need for actual bushels and how long do you think you'll need the truck for?
Yeah. And talk a little bit about, expectations as far as, when we send a truck out to a field, this is what time, typically we want to start. Talk a little bit more about that and, what that all entails.
Yeah. So, I mean, soybean harvest is typically
Crazy.
a later start time each day, right? You got to wake up and you don't know what you have for due and things like that. So we're more than happy to accommodate with that, but just some flexibility on our end as if we got to send trucks somewhere before they go to the farm so that they're productive with their day as well. These trucks that we've hired for harvest, it's our job to keep them busy.
Yeah.
And then be able to service you when needed. So just some flexibility on your end with us that we can maximize what we're doing each day before we send the truck there.
For sure. Okay. Well, anything else that you feel like is really pertinent, you want to make sure that you add to our customers that are listening to know about if they're interested?
Yeah. Just touching on that flexibility piece and just understanding efficiency. I mean, it's our job to serve you as best as possible, but it's also our job to make sure that we're efficient with our time each day and the trucks that we've hired. So you're always first in our mind and we're always going to provide the best service, but just have some understanding that when we get there, we're ready to roll. And, if we don't get there at the exact time that you wanted, that we're not putting you last. We're just trying to maximize what we're doing each day.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And again, if you're listening, if you're, maybe a farmer or a customer, you're listening, you're thinking, maybe your son in college isn't going to be able to, maybe your son graduated, went to college, son or daughter went to college, graduated, and isn't going to be able to be home as much to help you during the week. Maybe you're starting to think to yourself, how could I do this? Well, this might be a great resource for you. So definitely if you're interested in, getting some on-farm grain picked up, especially during harvest, start to, chat with your originator or with anybody on the Grow Grain team. I will also just say, we're headed into summer. There is a lot of grain on farm yet. So if there's anything that you need, here in the meantime, this summer for grain movement, we certainly have some trucks available. So reach out again to the Grow Grain team, to your originator. Even, you could stop into your location as well and request that. So really good topic. I'm glad that you're able to talk about this a little bit with us here today.
Yeah, I would just add, I don't have any help in doing this. This is all me for the whole company. So if you ever need help with anything logistics wise, or you're not getting that, feel free to reach out, ask for me. I can give you a call too, and we can go over some stuff. But the more details, the better for sure. So that just makes everything better.
For sure. Okay. Well, thank you so much for listening to the podcast today. Be sure that you're subscribed so that you never miss a grain or agronomy or special episode release, and we'll catch you next time.